Hey friend, it's Sherold Barr. I'm a master coach and writer. Today I want to talk about the life-changing power of David Hawkins, MD, PhD, his process of letting go. David wrote a book of the same name called Lettinggo. Recently I joined a study group and we've been reading this book each week and get together and talk about the spiritual concepts. I wanted to share that with you. So David is a psychiatrist, and this is his simple technique that dissolves anxiety, anger, and pain in minutes without therapy, medication, or years of practice. And I want to just put a caveat there and say that if you need a counselor or psychiatric help, please do that. This is a technique that can just help you let go of, it's a practice of letting go of anxiety, anger, and something that's triggering you. This is a 3-step process that changed how I handle negative emotions, and I think it will help you too. So I've always been drawn to practices that will help us release what no longer serves us. It wasn't until I faced the ultimate test of surrender that I truly understood its power. In 2017, after a near-fatal car wreck in Baja, Mexico, that left me with a fractured sacrum, and I had 6 abdominal surgeries, I found myself lying in the Mexican hospital room, looking up at the surgical lights with only 5 words: "I'm in your hands, God." That moment of complete surrender, when I absolutely had no control left, it changed everything in my life. And during my 3rd surgery, I had a near-death experience where a voice asked me, "You get to choose how you go through this experience. What will you choose?" And I was at the time I was between worlds. I was unconscious yet conscious. To hear this, it was a near-death experience, so I could hear this voice that was not my own ask me the question, and I thought, I don't want to be a victim, so I'll choose the high road, and I'll use love and gratitude to heal. And that's what I did. And I woke up a totally different person with a totally higher state of consciousness. I would say energy. It wasn't like I could get up and bounce around the hospital room. But I survived 5 abdominal surgeries in 15 days, which is pretty darn miraculous. I chose love and gratitude over victimhood, and the miracles just began to unfold. What I discovered through that trauma, and what I've been practicing ever since, is that surrender is not defeat. It's not giving up at all. It's the pathway to profound healing and peace. And I found the more I practice surrender about things in my life that happen that I have no control over, my relationship with my husband, something goes wrong with technology, I could go down the list. These things happen. I can only control myself. So I literally have just a mental process where I think, I'm going to lay this down and let my higher power handle it. And so this higher power is the God of your understanding, whatever that is. You can say universe, however you feel comfortable. That's who you're letting go to. When I later discovered Dr. Hawkins' specific letting go process, I immediately recognized what he was describing. His systematic approach gave language and structure to what I'd experienced in the hospital room and have been practicing intuitively ever since. Dr. Hawkins, MD, PhD, was a renowned psychologist, researcher, and spiritual teacher who developed a systematic approach to emotional freedom. And that's what we all want. His book, Letting Go, The Pathway of Surrender, outlines a precise method for releasing negative emotions and limiting beliefs that keep us stuck. But what makes his work truly revolutionary isn't just the technique, it's the deep understanding of consciousness and emotion that underlies it. My journey from trauma to transformation, after I survived 3 significant traumas in my life, and this near-fatal car wreck in Baja was the third, I believed I survived that wreck to live and tell this story. So what happened in that Mexican hospital wasn't just about physical healing. It was about discovering a state of consciousness I'd never experienced before. I knew something had happened to me, but I didn't know what it was. And I even thought, I wonder if these people taking care of me are going to notice. And they did. They did. I had people coming to my room that weren't assigned to my care. CNA said, I know you have to go, but I don't want you to go. So they could feel something was different about me. During my recovery, I looked out at the world and my eyes observed what was happening without emotion. It felt like pure peace. It was as if my ego had just been turned off. That repetitive negative voice in our head that chatters at us all day long, it was gone. And in its place was the purest, most beautiful, profound peace, love, and compassion I'd ever felt in my life. Everything was perfect, exactly as it was. I didn't resist or want to change anything because it was what is, and I loved it. That experience taught me that we can practice surrendering in small ways before we face the big ultimate tests we face in life. And while my profound surrender happened after a life-threatening car wreck, I want you to start building your muscle with everyday frustrations and minor emotions. Because once you do, you're going to know how to use it when you need it the most. So for years before discovering David Hawkins' formal process, I'd been practicing what I now recognize as his 3 steps. When I'm stuck in negative thinking, and I bet you we all have been going through this lately because the world, our outer world, is pretty crazy right now, especially here in the U.S. I imagine putting those thoughts in a bag or a box, and I literally will just lift it and then set it down on the ground. Sometimes I've also said delete, delete, delete through all time, space, and dimensions if I catch myself in a loop. And it's a way of saying, I don't have to believe every thought that crosses my mind. But because our thoughts from the ego are not true. They're all lies. What's true is that higher self, that place that I was in, that bliss state. That's the place that's connected to divinity. And when I need to surrender something I can't change, whether it's my relationship dynamics or an issue where I feel stuck, I mentally see myself holding it and in this box, and I imagine laying it on the ground and surrendering to what I call the boss. I call my God the boss sometimes because he's the boss of everything, or she's the boss, which I know is benevolent. God, the universe is benevolent, and I have evidence of that after all these traumas. So I know what I know is true for me. And I know it's true for you too. We just don't know it yet. So what makes Hawkins' process different? What I love about his approach is that it gave scientific structure to what I'd experienced intuitively. Unlike general concepts of letting go, Hawkins created a simple step-by-step technique that I'm going to share with you today. His process is based on the understanding that we have 3 choices when faced with a feeling. We can suppress it, we can express it, or we can escape from it by numbing out. But there's a 4th option that most people never discover, and that is let the feeling be there and let it go. Jill Bolte Taylor, who is a neuroscientist who had a near fatal stroke and came back, she said it takes 90 seconds from the time we think a negative thought to have our body experiencing it as if it's real. So you can imagine what our poor bodies go through. And that thought will pass through us in 90 seconds if you just allow it to. And for me, this was the hardest part because I wanted to run from these feelings, I wanted to escape from these feelings, or I wanted to just stuff them, which is not good. So this has helped me begin this process of digging out, is what I want to say. So what I've come to appreciate through my practice, both in crisis and in daily life, is how this approach differs from everything our culture teaches us about emotions. We're conditioned to either push the feelings away, act them out dramatically, or numb ourselves with distractions. And Hawkins offers something radically different. It's a way for us to be with our emotions that transforms us. So here's the 3-step process. Through my practice with this technique, I've discovered it's elegantly simple, yet remarkably effective. So step 1, allow yourself to feel. Instead of resisting, fighting, or trying to change the emotion, allow it to be there. Feel it without judgment. That means dropping the story you're telling yourself about why you're feeling this way, and just experience the raw sensation in your body. And in my experience, this first step is the hardest because we're so used to immediately spinning stories about our feelings, justifying them, analyzing them, or making them go away. So learning to feel without mental chatter or commentary takes practice. Step 2, let it be there. Don't try to push the feeling away or hold on to it. Allow it to exist within you without resistance. This is different from wallowing in it, feeding the emotion with thoughts, telling other people about it. You're simply allowing its presence. This step requires what we call inner spaciousness. It's like becoming the sky that holds the clouds rather than the clouds themselves. The emotion is there, but you're not consumed by it. Step 3, let it go. When you're ready, and only when you're ready, let the feeling leave. You don't need to force it out or analyze it away. It will naturally dissolve when you stop energizing it with resistance. So see, resistance gives it energy, and you just want to let it be. What amazes me about this final step is how organic it feels when you're truly done with the first 2 steps. The emotion seems to release itself like a wave that just naturally recedes as it reaches the shore. So here's the deeper understanding why this process is revolutionary. Through practicing Hawkins' method and studying his deeper teachings, I've come to understand that this process works on multiple levels simultaneously. Surrender as healing. At its core, letting go is about surrender. And again, not as defeat or passivity, but as a conscious release of emotional resistance. Most of our suffering doesn't come from what we feel. It comes from fighting what we think. When we stop the inner war, the healing begins naturally. And here's the energetics of emotion. Hawkins taught that emotions are measurable energy fields that correlate with different levels of consciousness. Each emotional state, grief, Let's say shame. Death is 0, 1,000 is Buddha state. Shame is down at 23, grief is 27, fear is under 200, anger, pride, and courage. Courage is where things begin to move from a negative state to a positive state. And that vibrates at a certain frequency. Lower emotions contract our awareness and drain our vitality. Higher emotions, like I was in, and when you're in love, you feel it too. These emotions expand our consciousness and restore, and I think give energy. So what I've experienced personally is that the letting go process is literally an ascent up this emotional ladder. As I release lower frequency emotions, I find myself in higher states of peace, joy, and clarity. And to break this illusion of control, one of the most liberating insights that Hawkins' work is understanding. This is so important. Resistance creates suffering. We exhaust ourselves trying to control our inner experience when our true power comes from yielding rather than forcing. And through my practice, I've learned that emotions I was most afraid to feel, this was anxiety and shame, guilt, those were the ones I was most afraid to feel. They were the ones that once I welcomed them, in other words, I let them be, transform more easily. And this is how you see through the ego's games. Hawkins identified the ego as the root of our internal struggle. That voice that's driven by fear, scarcity, and the need for external approval and validation. You know that voice. The ego doesn't want us to let go of anger, guilt, because it uses these emotions to maintain its identity. And learning to see through these patterns has been one of the most freeing aspects of this work. I want you to know the key insight. Feelings aren't facts. One of Hawkins' most powerful teaching is that feelings are simply energy in motion. They're not permanent parts of who we are, nor do they define reality. A feeling of fear doesn't mean you're actually in danger. Your body might think that it is, but you're not in actual danger if you're thinking a fearful thought. A feeling of unworthiness doesn't mean you lack value. These are just energetic patterns moving through your system. You can see it's like a movie going through on a screen. And what happens is we're attaching to some of these stories and then running through these feelings. This understanding has been life-changing for me. And instead of being at the mercy of every emotion that arises, I've learned to relate to these feelings as temporary visitors rather than permanent residents. Why this practice works so profoundly is through my practice and study of Hawkins' work, I've discovered this process works on multiple levels. It honors your humanity by allowing you to feel without judgment. No emotion is wrong or bad. It prevents emotional suppression that can lead to physical and mental issues by giving feelings a healthy way to complete their cycle and leave. It builds emotional resilience by teaching you that you can handle any feeling that arises. I believe that's one of the most important ones, and I know for me it is. It creates space for higher emotions to emerge naturally, and when these lower emotions are released, love, peace, and joy can now flow more easily. And it addresses the body-mind connection by acknowledging these emotional patterns, often manifest as physical symptoms. So the practical application in everyday life, you can use this process with any emotion: anger, fear, sadness, guilt, shame, or even positive emotions you're afraid to lose. This reminds me of Dr. Rick Hansen, who also talks about expanding the good emotions. Because when you're expanding something good that you're doing, and that just means staying in it, feeling it as long as you can, you're rewiring your brain. And that's another reason you want to let those negative ones go, so you're not up here rewiring it, those neurocircuits. So here's a simple exercise I use regularly. When you notice yourself in emotional reactivity, see if you can pause and ask yourself, can I allow this feeling to be here? Can I let it be here without trying to change it? Can I let it go? You don't have to answer yes to move to the next question, because if you just ask those questions, it opens up the potential. I found it helpful to work with, for me, anxiety. That's these smaller emotions. But if you're dealing with rage or deep grief, start by practicing with just minor irritations. You know the ones I'm talking about. Or mild disappointments. And that's going to help you build your letting go muscle with manageable feelings before you need it for the big thing. I want to kind of end here by saying the universality and simplicity of the path. Despite its profound spiritual depth, what I love most about Hawkins' approach is its simplicity. No guru is needed. You don't have to pay money for any of this right now. Again, if you need a counselor, please seek out a counselor. This is in any situation you can, begin this process of surrender. It's radical and it's accessible. It puts the power of transformation in your hands. And here's a personal reflection on surrender and transformation. When I initially approached Hawkins' work after already having these profound, surrender experiences as part of this wreck and other traumas I've had, studying this method gave me the framework for what saved my life. And what draws me to Hawkins' approach is not just the effectiveness, but the way it empowers us to work with our emotions skillfully rather than being at their mercy. And my near-death experience taught me that letting go of negative emotion means experiencing ever-increasing happiness, contentment, and peace and joy. It's an expansion of awareness and a return to our inner self, that higher self within you that is connected to the God of your understanding or to the universe. Letting go is one of the most productive tools for reaching spiritual goals. And I've experienced profound growth by letting go of control and letting the boss take over. That's what I've been practicing now, is the boss's will, not my will, because I've spent my whole life pushing boulders uphill. And it's really the boss's will that I'm working for the boss now. I've become extremely spiritual, not religious, but spiritual, since I've had these experiences that were miraculous. And I've discovered that every time I truly let go of something, whether it's a minor frustration or a bigger hurt, I don't just feel relief, I feel more myself. It's as if I'm returning to that state of my true self that I experienced during the near-death experience, and it's one that's not clouded by emotional baggage. I just highly encourage you to try it and let me know in the comments below what you think of this practice, and I would love to hear from you. And if you want more of this, you can always go to my YouTube channel at Sherold Barr and then subscribe here to have access to some workshops that are going to be free for my subscribers here on Substack. And if you're interested in coaching, shoot me an email at sheroldbarr.com. I have special packages that I can share with you. So I want you to just practice letting go and let me hear from you. Thanks.